Have you ever observed an insect? I mean really observed one. By approaching it carefully, then watching it for several seconds, without disturbing it. Did you wonder what was going on in its head while you were watching it? Was it afraid? Did it carry on as usual? Did it even notice you? Like us, insects have organs that enable them to see, smell, and touch. They also have a brain that takes up almost the entire volume of their head. But, unlike our brain, theirs is tiny. Reasonably, it makes us wonder what purpose it serves and how it works. Do insects have intelligence? Do they feel emotions? Are they conscious beings? Are they creative? I've been studying these questions for about 15 years. My relationship with these small invertebrates that have a head, thorax, abdomen, 6 legs, and almost always wings, got off to a rough start, however. I mistreated them at first. As a child, I lived in a house with a yard. Like many young children, I developed the habit of tasting everything I found on the ground. Often, I would catch ants. Other times, it would be ladybugs. This was much to the dismay of my parents, who fed me well. Then, as I grew up, I started playing war. I besieged anthills with my plastic soldiers and captured their ant leader. At that point, I had no idea that these insects have an immense devotion to their queens, protecting them at all costs, and not hesitating to sting or bite any intruder trying to approach them. Later, I wanted to tame them. I would put ants in an empty jam jar and pierce holes in the lid to make sure they could breathe. Then I would add twigs to keep them from starving, and firebugs to keep them company. Unfortunately for the latter, ants can be very aggressive, and they need animal protein to feed their larvae and reproduce. When I grew up, I learned to love insects. It was at university that I discovered ethology, the science of animal behavior. During practicums, we would watch videos of animals with the task of writing down everything we observed in an attempt to understand their behavior. How many times did a young herring gull have to beg its mother for food to get a fish? How long would it take for Canada geese to decide to stop grazing on grass and look up to watch for predators? These videos were endless, but they sparked a vocation in me. Little by little, I began to see the animals around me differently. I first tried to photograph birds, but as my camera's memory card filled up with failed shots, I realized that it was much easier to take great photos of insects. A bumblebee, for example, can remain perfectly still for several dozen seconds while foraging from a flower, its target 2 centimeters from its antennae.